Okay, I want you to picture something, just for a second. You're in your car. It's, I don't know, a Tuesday evening. You're tired.
Right. The end of a long day.
Exactly. And you have that list of errands, You have to pick up the dry cleaning, maybe grab a bottle of wine, and get some takeout because cooking is just absolutely not happening tonight.
Oh, that is a very familiar feeling.
So you pull off the main road into this sea of asphalt that's probably a little cracked. Maybe there's a pothole you have to dodge. You find a spot and you park right in front of a row of like beige stucco storefronts.
And the lighting is probably a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
That sort of orange glow. Maybe there's the neon sign buzzing somewhere.
Exactly. It is not beautiful. In fact, if you asked an architect, they might tell you it's a crime against humanity. But you're there. You're participating in this ritual that millions of us do every single day without a second thought. We are talking, of course, about the strip mall.
The ubiquitous strip. Or what I like to call the retail spleen of the suburbs.
And look, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, we're going to do a whole deep dive on strip malls, on those ugly L-shaped blocks. But here's the thing, and this is why we're here today. We dismiss them because they are ugly. We ignore them because they are everywhere.
They're invisible because they're so visible.
Yes. But if you actually peel back the stucco, this is one of the most fascinating economic and architectural machines ever invented.
It really, really is. It's a perfect case study in how the automobile completely conquered the world. It's a story about zoning laws, global oil crises, tax loopholes, and even construction technology.
So that's the mission today. We're going to take this thing that is arguably the most invisible structure in our lives. Invisible because we refuse to really look at it. And we're going to figure out why it exists, why it looks the way it does, and why, despite everyone screaming about the retail apocalypse, these things are actually somehow multiplying.
We are going to make you see that L-shaped concrete lot in a whole new light.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. If I'm looking at a row of stores, how do I know it's a strip mall and not just, a street with shops? Is there a technical sort of textbook definition, or is it just a vibe?
Oh, there is absolutely a technical definition. Yeah, in the industry. And especially if you look at how the International Council of Shopping Centers, the ICSC, defines it, there are a few non-negotiables.
Okay.
First, it has to be an open-air shopping center.
Open air, so no roof over the walkway, no big atrium with a sad little fountain in the middle.
Correct. If it's enclosed, you're talking about a regional mall. That's a different beast. Here, you're open to the elements. Second is the configuration. The stores are arranged in a row or a strip.
Hence the name.
Hence the name. And crucially, there is a sidewalk, a footpath, that runs directly in front of all the stores.
Which seems kind of obvious, right? I mean, you need a place to walk, but that sidewalk, it's not a public street sidewalk, is it? It's private property.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's a private transition zone. But the real defining characteristic, the thing that separates a strip mall from a traditional main street or a downtown district, is its relationship with the car.
Ah, okay.
In a strip mall, the parking is located in front of the building, between the stores and the street.
That's the key. So the building itself is pushed way back from the road, and the asphalt is the welcome mat.
It's the foyer. It's the first thing you encounter. In a traditional city layout, the buildings are pushed right up to the sidewalk, they engage with the street, and parking is either on the street or maybe hidden in the back.
Right.
The strip mall completely flips that. It turns its back on the street and says the car is the primary customer. The building itself has to retreat to the rear of the lot to create a stage for the automobiles.
It's interesting you call it a stage, because when you drive past a successful strip mall, what do you see? You see a full parking lot. It's a form of social proof.
Precisely. It's a visual cue. If you hid the parking lot in the back, a driver doing, say, 45 miles an hour on that main road wouldn't know if the place was popular or completely dead. The visible parking lot is a billboard that screams, "People are here, it's safe, it's busy, you should be here too."
And these things are almost always on what you called arterial roads. They aren't tucked away on quiet neighborhood streets.
Oh no, never. They thrive on traffic volume. They are, in a way, parasites on the daily commute. Developers talk about this all the time. You have the going to work side of the street and the going home side.
And you want the going home side.
You fight tooth and nail for the going home side, because that's when you stop for the wine and the dry cleaning and the takeout. It's a massive difference in revenue.
That makes so much sense. I also want to touch on this idea of isolation. In the research, it said these are often self-contained, and I've noticed this in my own area. There is a strip mall that literally backs up to a residential street. I can see the back of the grocery store from my friend's backyard.
Right.
But for him to actually get there, to walk there, he has to walk almost a mile all the way around the block to the main road and then into the parking lot.
And that is absolutely by design. Or maybe a limitation of the design. The strip mall is an island. It has to turn its back on the community it's supposed to serve in order to face the road.
Why, though? Why wall it off?
Well, the rear of a strip mall is a service corridor. It's not pretty. It's where the dumpsters are, where the delivery trucks make noise at 5 in the morning, where the grease traps from the restaurants are.
You don't want a path for kids to walk through there.
Exactly. For safety, for liability, and for aesthetic reasons, you don't want pedestrian connections there. So you create this really weird dynamic where the neighborhood that is the primary customer base is physically walled off from it.
So it's the architecture of convenience for the driver, but total hostility for the walker.
That's a perfect way to put it. It assumes you'll always arrive by car.
Okay, before we get into the whole origin story, I feel like we need to clear up the names. Because strip mall has a bit of a stigma, doesn't it? Like, sounds a bit, I don't know, a bit trashy.
It does. It absolutely does. It implies a certain grittiness or lack of sophistication. So the industry, the developers and real estate brokers, they try to rebrand it.
With what?
You'll hear strip center, which just sounds a bit more clinical, more professional, or you'll hear plaza.
The plaza. Oh, that always sounds so fancy until you get there and you realize it's just a vape shop, a laundromat, and a Subway.
Right? Or shopping village, which is my personal favorite because it's the absolute furthest thing from a village you could possibly imagine. A village implies, community, walkability.
A public square.
Yes. This is the opposite of that. And then you have the size distinctions, which are important.
Right, so we have the mini mall.
The classic, the one that sort of spawned on every corner in the 80s, 7-Eleven plus, 3 or 4 other little stores.
And on the other end of the spectrum, the power center.
Which is the industry term for those massive, sprawling complexes. They're anchored by a Target, a Best Buy, a Kohl's, a Home Depot. But if you look at the structure, it's just a strip mall on steroids. The same DNA.
Okay, so we know what it is now. A row of stores, pushed back from the road, parking in the front, facing the traffic. But this design, it had to be invented. I mean, humans have been trading for thousands of years in markets and main streets. We didn't always trade like this. Where does this lineage actually start?
Well, to find the grandfather of the strip mall, we have to go to the spiritual home of car culture.
Has to be Los Angeles.
Of course.
Yeah.
Los Angeles in the 1920s.
Okay.
In the 20s, car ownership was just exploding, but the city infrastructure hadn't really caught up yet. So you had these things called drive-in markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to picture, a piece of property where a few independent vendors, a butcher, a baker, a produce guy, would set up shop together.
Oh, okay.
They weren't in one unified building, but they were clustered together on one lot, specifically catering to people who were pulling up in their new Model Ts.
So it was a cluster of convenience designed for the car.
Exactly. But it was still a bit chaotic. It
Yeah.
wasn't the single unified architectural form that we know today. For the real year zero of the modern strip mall, we have to go to 1930. And surprisingly, it's not in California.
Oh, okay. Lay it on me.
It's in Washington, D.C.
DC, that's not what I expected.
Not at all. The neighborhood's called Cleveland Park, and the development was called the Park and Shop.
Park and shop. I mean, it's an instruction manual. It says exactly what to do.
It literally was.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, in 1930, this was a radical concept. The prevailing wisdom of all retail was that your storefront window had to be on the sidewalk. That's how you got foot traffic. That's how people saw your goods.
Of course, window shopping.
Yes. The developers of Park and Shop took an insane gamble. They built the stores in an L shape and deliberately set them back from the street to create a dedicated parking court in the front.
And the banks and the city planners must have thought they were absolutely crazy. You're wasting your most valuable real estate, the frontage, on storing cars?
The banks hated it. They thought it was a complete waste of frontage. They couldn't get their heads around it.
Yeah.
But the developers understood something fundamental was changing. The customer base was changing. They weren't walking from the trolley stop anymore. They were driving.
And if they couldn't park, they couldn't shop.
They'd just keep driving. The car created a new problem, and the Park and Shop was the solution.
Who was the anchor tenant? The big draw that got people to try this new thing.
It was a Piggly Wiggly supermarket.
That is perfect. That's actually perfect because Piggly Wiggly was the company that invented the whole concept of self-service grocery shopping.
That's right.
So you have the store that invented self-service shopping inside the center that invented self-service parking.
It's a beautiful parallel, isn't it? The whole experience was being redesigned around individual convenience and the automobile. And here's the most amazing part. That Park and Shop in Cleveland Park, it's still there. It's still operating today. It survived the Great Depression, World War II, the flight to the suburbs in the 50s, the urban renewal of the 60s, the rise of the internet. It's anchored by a Target now. But the layout, the L shape, the parking in front is identical.
That is genuinely wild. It proves that this isn't just a trend or a style. It's a highly, highly efficient machine for commerce.
It is. But if the Park and Shop was the, let's say, the prototype, the mass production didn't really happen until much, much later. The strip mall didn't become the default setting of the American landscape until the 1970s.
And this is where the story gets really interesting to me, because usually when we talk about the history of architecture, we talk about, a specific visionary architect or an artistic movement. But the strip mall explosion, it wasn't about art. It was about geopolitics and, weirdly, chemistry.
It absolutely was. To understand the mini-mall boom of the 70s and 80s, you have to look at the 1973 oil crisis.
Okay, connect the dots for us. How does an oil embargo in the Middle East lead to a 7-Eleven and a nail salon in Reseda, California?
So, 1973, the OPEC oil embargo hits. Gas prices, as we all know, they skyrocket. But more importantly for this story, the supply chain for independent gas stations completely collapses.
Okay.
Before 1973, there were gas stations on almost every major corner. You remember? The full-service kind.
Right, where a guy in a uniform would come out, check your oil, wipe your windshield.
Exactly. The crisis wiped thousands of them out that just went bankrupt, almost overnight. Now, think about where gas stations are located.
Always on a corner. The intersection of two main roads.
Always. It is the absolute best, highest visibility, highest traffic real estate in a suburban grid. And suddenly, in cities like Los Angeles, you had hundreds of these prime corner lots sitting vacant with abandoned pumps on them.
It's a vacuum. And nature abhors the vacuum.
And real estate developers abhor it even more.
So in come the developers.
In comes a group called La Mancha Developers. They were one of the pioneers, among others. And they saw these small, square-ish lots. They were too small for the big supermarket, but way too valuable to just leave empty. So they developed what we now call the mini mall concept.
Right.
A tight L shape, maybe 4 or 5 small storefronts, with the parking just squeezed into the middle, right on that corner.
And this is where the construction technology comes into play, isn't it? Because these things went up incredibly fast. It felt like they just appeared overnight.
This is the part of the story most people miss. It wasn't just that the land became available. It was that the method of building them was perfected at the same time. We're talking about the era of tilt-up concrete construction.
Tilt up. Okay, break that down for me. What does that mean?
Okay, so traditionally, if you want to build a concrete wall, you build a big wooden frame called a form, and you pour the concrete into it vertically. It's slow. It takes a lot of labor, a lot of scaffolding.
Right.
Tilt-up is. It's kind of brilliant in its simplicity and cheapness. You pour the concrete for the wall panels flat on the ground, literally on the floor slab of the building you're about to build, or even just on the asphalt of the parking lot.
So the parking lot becomes the factory floor for the walls.
Exactly. You let them cure right there. Then a crane comes in, hooks onto these massive panels, and just tilts them up into their vertical position. You bolt them together, put on a simple roof, paint the whole thing beige, and you're basically done. You can build an entire mini mall in a matter of weeks, not months. It's unbelievably cost-effective.
And that explains why they all look the same. They are quite literally cast from the same mold on the ground.
And why they can sometimes feel so flimsy or temporary. It's just a concrete shell. But that technology, combined with all those cheap corner lots from the gas station bust, it created a gold rush.
How big of a rush are we talking?
In the Los Angeles metropolitan area alone, they built something like 600 of these mini-malls in just a few years.
600. That is a massive, sudden transformation of the visual landscape of a city.
It was so aggressive that people really started to hate them. There was a huge backlash. They were seen as blight. They attracted litter. They increased traffic congestion right at the intersections. They were just seen as ugly.
So what happened?
By 1988, Los Angeles actually passed an emergency anti-mini-mall ordinance to ban the construction of new ones.
You know, you've really made it when the city government has to pass a law to specifically stop you from building any more of your product.
But by then it was too late. The template was set. The virus had escaped the lab. The mini mall had spread to every suburb in America.
Okay, so we've got the history, we've got the construction method. Now I want to get inside the machine. Let's talk about the anatomy of these places, the taxonomy, because it's not just a random collection of stores thrown together, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. It is a very carefully curated ecosystem. A successful strip mall is like a biological organism.
Mm.
Every single part has a very specific function.
So let's start with the biggest part, the big guy in the corner, the anchor.
The anchor tenant,
Yeah.
yes. In a smaller neighborhood center, this is almost always your grocery store.
Mm.
In a larger power center, it's your Target, your Walmart, your Kohl's. The anchor is the center of gravity for the whole complex.
They're the main draw.
They are the only reason probably 90% of the people who enter that parking lot are there in the first place.
And because of that, because they have all that power, they get a special deal on rent, don't they?
They get a very special deal. Often the anchor pays very, very little rent per square foot. Sometimes they pay almost no rent at all. In some very rare cases, the developer might even pay them a little bit to be there as an incentive.
Wow.
Because without that anchor, the little stores, the inline stores as they're called, they won't sign a lease. It's too risky.
So you're telling me the dry cleaner, the nail salon, the Chinese takeout place, they are effectively subsidizing the giant grocery store's rent.
In a way, yes. They pay a much, much higher rent per square foot. Because what they're really paying for is the privilege of drafting, like in a car race, off the anchor's foot traffic.
Ugh.
They need the mom who just went in to buy a gallon of milk to walk past their window and realize, oh yeah, I need a manicure. Or I should drop off this shirt.
It's the errand economy. You're trying to capture the customer while they're already stopped and out of their car.
That's it, exactly. And you'll notice the mix of those smaller tenants. It's almost a formula. You need a morning draw like a coffee shop or a donut place. You need an evening draw like a pizza place or a Thai restaurant.
And you need services.
You need services that require repeat visits, haircuts, nail salons, dry cleaning, a laundromat, things you have to do every week or every month.
I also want to ask about those little freestanding buildings I always see in the parking lot. They're not connected to the main strip. They're usually right up against the road. A bank, or a Starbucks, or a McDonald's.
Those are what the industry calls out parcels or pad sites. And they are the most visible and therefore most valuable spots in the entire development.
Why more valuable than being in the main strip?
Because you don't even need to turn into the main mall's parking lot to see them or access them. They catch the impulse driver. They have their own drive thrust. They command the absolute highest rent.
And what about the sign? The big, tall, skinny sign by the road with all the logos stacked up on top of each other. The pylon sign.
Ah, the totem pole of suburbia. There's a whole science to that sign. The anchor tenant always gets the big top slot by contract. The little guys have to fight for the smaller slots at the bottom.
And it has to be readable at speed. Right.
That is the entire key. The font size, the color contrast, the spacing, it's all calculated for a driver moving at 45 miles per hour to be able to process in about 1.5 seconds.
That's aggressive graphic design.
It has to be.
Yeah.
If you can't read the word PCA in half a second, that business is probably going to fail.
I want to shift gears to the money behind it all again, because there's a financial term I kept seeing in the research when people talk about strip malls, and that's triple net lease.
Ah, yes. The NNN lease.
It sounds like a wrestling move or something. What does it mean, and why is it so important to this whole model?
It's so important because it explains why investors absolutely love building and owning these sometimes ugly things. So in a standard lease, like for an apartment, you pay your rent, and the landlord uses that money to pay the property taxes, the building's insurance, and to fix the roof when it leaks.
Right. Standard landlord stuff.
In a commercial triple net lease, the tenant, the business owner, pays their base rent plus the 3 nets.
Which are?
Net 1 is property taxes. Net 2 is the building insurance. And net 3 is common area maintenance, or SAM.
Wait a minute. So if the city raises the property tax on the shopping center, the guy who runs the comic book shop has to pay his share of that increase.
Yes. If the parking lot needs to be repaved, all the tenants split the bill. If the snow needs to be plowed, they pay for it through their CAM charges. The landlord's income is essentially protected from all of those rising operating costs.
They just collect the check.
They basically just collect the check. It makes owning a strip mall an incredibly passive, stable, and predictable investment, which is why they are so popular with, wealthy individuals or big pension funds.
So the landlord is essentially just owning the dirt and the concrete shell, and the tenants are the ones actually running and maintaining the building.
That's a great way to put it. And that financial structure, that triple net lease, is the powerful economic engine that keeps these things running, even when they start to look a little bit run down.
Okay, so this brings us to the big elephant in the room, the retail apocalypse. I mean, we have been told for 15, 20 years now that Amazon is eating the world. We've all seen pictures of dead and closed malls. We saw Toys R Us disappear. Logic would dictate that strip malls should be going extinct.
And yet, they're like cockroaches. They just seem to survive everything.
So let's look at the actual data. Are they dying or not?
The top line numbers say, surprisingly, no, not at all. In 2013, there were about 840 strip malls in the U.S.
Okay.
As of early 2024, that number has grown to over 68,000. So we are still adding them to the landscape, not subtracting them.
But is that the whole story? Because I drive past some strip malls that look pretty sad, a lot of for lease signs in the windows.
Right, and this is where we have to be a little more nuanced. Because not all strip malls are created equal. In real estate, properties are often graded. Class A, Class B, and Class C.
Okay, break that down for us.
Class A is your shiny new power center in an affluent growing suburb. It's got a Whole Foods, maybe a Lululemon, a nice new Target. Those places are booming. Vacancy rates are practically zero. Landlords can charge whatever they want.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you have Class C. That's the unrenovated 1970s mini mall in a town where the main factory just closed down. It's got a dollar store, a pawn shop, and a lot of empty storefronts. Those are dying. A lot of them are.
So when we say strip malls are surviving, we really mean that well-located strip malls with the right tenant mix are evolving and thriving.
Precisely. And it comes right back to that tenant mix we talked about before. You can't get a haircut on the internet.
Right.
You can't get your clothes dry cleaned on Amazon. The tenants that are succeeding are the internet-proof tenants. Gyms, urgent care clinics, nail salons, restaurants, vets. These are all experiential. You have to physically be there.
So the big enclosed malls that sold, clothes and books and electronics, they are the ones getting killed by online shopping.
Exactly. But the humble strip mall that sells services and convenience is actually surprisingly insulated from that.
I've also noticed something else that's kind of weird. I am starting to see brands that were born on the internet opening physical stores in strip malls. I saw a Warby Parker in a strip mall the other day.
Yes. The clicks to bricks phenomenon. It's called the halo effect. It turns out, if you are a big online brand, opening a physical store actually lowers your online customer acquisition cost.
How does that work?
People see the sign when they're driving to the grocery store. It builds brand awareness. They can go in and touch the product. And, crucially, they can return items in person, which saves the company a fortune in reverse shipping fees. So now these cool, hip, digital native brands are fighting for space in strip malls right next to the dry cleaner.
So in a strange way, the strip mall is becoming the physical interface for the internet?
It is, in a way. It's the fulfillment center that you can actually walk into. It's a key part of the modern logistics chain.
I want to zoom out now, literally out of the country. Because we think of this form, this architecture, as pure Americana. But did we export this model? Do they have strip malls in, say, Europe?
Yes and no. I'd say it's a case of same hardware, different software. Let's take the UK and Ireland as an example.
Okay, what do they call them there?
They're known as retail parks, or sometimes retail outlets. And if you look at them, they look very similar. Big box stores, lots of parking right in the front. But the context, the role they play in the society is totally different.
How so?
Well, in the U.S., for many, many suburbs, the strip mall is the town center. It's the only commercial hub.
Yeah.
In the U.K., you have these ancient, historic town centers, the high street, with narrow cobblestone streets and buildings from the 1600s.
Which are beautiful but terrible for cars.
Absolutely terrible for cars. You can't park a Range Rover in a medieval village. Many of them are pedestrianized now. So the retail parks get pushed to the absolute edge of town, out by the motorway.
So they're not integrated into the community.
Not at all. They're strictly utilitarian. You drive out there to go to the big hardware store or to buy bulk pet food, but you don't hang out there. The social life, the cafes, the pubs, that all stays in the historic high street.
So they've managed to separate the chore shopping from the leisure and social shopping.
For the most part, yes. Whereas in many American suburbs, the strip mall has to be all of those things. It's the only place to go.
And what about Australia? I got really confused reading the notes on this one.
Australia is a linguistic trap for Americans. If an Australian says they're going to the strip shops, they are not talking about a place with a big parking lot.
What are they talking about then?
They are talking about a traditional main street, a line of shops built right up to the sidewalk with parking on the street. It's what we would call a traditional downtown.
So the complete opposite of our definition of a strip mall.
The exact opposite. If you want to find a U.S.-style, car-oriented strip mall in, say, Sydney, you're looking for something they call a homemaker center or a big box complex. But their planning laws are generally much stricter. They really try to protect their local high street strips from being cannibalized by the big out-of-town boxes.
It really seems like most of the world sort of tolerates the strip mall as a necessary evil for car culture, whereas America didn't just tolerate it, we embraced it as a lifestyle.
That's a very fair assessment. In America, we zoned for it. We made it the law. In many U.S. cities, for a very long time, it was actually illegal to build anything else in commercial zones.
What do you mean illegal?
I mean zoning codes that mandated huge setbacks from the road. They mandated minimum parking requirements, so many spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail. You had to build a sea of asphalt. It was impossible to build a traditional, walkable main street. We legislated the ugliness into existence.
That was a very depressing thought. We mandated the beige stucco box.
We prioritized the efficient flow of automobile traffic over creating any real sense of place. And we're living with the consequences of that today.
So on that note, let's look to the future. We have, 68,000 of these things in the country? That's millions of acres of asphalt. We know retail's still changing. We know there's a massive housing crisis. What happens to the strip mall in, say, 2050?
This is actually the most exciting part of the story for urban planners right now. We are seeing the slow rise of what's called retrofitting suburbia.
Retrofitting? What does that look like in practice?
Well, just look at the asset. You've got a huge flat piece of land. It's usually on a main bus or transit line. It already has all the utility hookups, water, sewer, electricity. In a dense city, that is development gold.
So you tear down the old Target and build apartment buildings?
Sometimes. Or, even more interestingly, you build apartments on top of the existing parking lot. You turn that single-story sprawl into a multi-story mixed-use village.
So you keep the shops?
You keep the retail on the ground floor. You put the parking into a more efficient garage structure instead of a surface lot. And then you build 5 or 6 stories of apartments or condos on top of it all.
So you're basically taking the strip mall and trying to turn it back into a traditional town center.
Exactly. We're seeing this all over. It's called gray field redevelopment, turning these dying asphalt fields back into walkable, livable neighborhoods. It's closing the historical circle. We went from walkable towns to drivable strips, and now we are spending billions of dollars trying to engineer the walkability back in.
But that's for the dying ones, the Class C ones. What about the successful Class A power centers?
They will likely stay the same for a very long time. As long as the majority of us drive cars, as long as we live in low-density suburbs, the sheer efficiency of that L-shaped lot with parking in front is unbeatable. It is the pantry of the suburbs.
The pantry of the suburbs. I like that.
Yeah, and you don't renovate your pantry to look like a museum or a beautiful living room. You keep it organized and efficient so you can get in, grab the cereal, and get out. That's its function.
That is a perfect analogy. It's not supposed to be beautiful. It's a machine for living.
It is.
So we've gone from the 1920s drive-in markets to the concrete tilt-up boxes of the 1970s oil crisis, all the way through the supposed retail apocalypse, and now into a potential future as the foundation for new housing.
It's a lot of history and a lot of economic power for a place where you just go to buy socks and milk.
Okay, so here is my challenge to you, the listener. The next time you pull into that spot, and you know the one I'm talking about, right in front of the pizza place where the pavement is a little uneven, don't just rush in, just take 5 seconds, sit in your car, and look. Look at the pylon sign. Look at the simple concrete walls.
Notice where the anchor tenant is. Notice how the cars flow through the lot. Notice the little pad sites out by the road.
And just realize that you are standing in a perfectly evolved economic habitat. It might not be pretty, but it is a survivor. It has outlasted so many other forms of retail and architecture.
And it's probably going to outlive all of us.
And here's the final thought I want to leave you with. We've established that this thing is maybe the most resilient form of architecture we have. But it's an architecture built entirely around the car. So what happens, maybe not in our lifetimes, but someday, if we move away from personal car ownership? What happens to these 68,000 L-shaped lots when the cars are gone?
Hmm, that's a great question.
On that note, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure. See you next time.